Hello and welcome to another episode of Making Gains with me, Radzi, in association with the University of Derby, where they make it real. And Finnebrogues Naked Bacon, the biggest revolution to happen to British breakfast in a generation. Now, our guest for this episode show can literally and metaphorically kick your ass. He is a 2-time Grand Prix champion in Taekwondo, the 1-time European champion, and the 2-time Olympic medalist, Lutalo Muhammad. Welcome to Making Gains, sir.
Thank you for having me. Awesome, man. Thank you for the introduction and love that Muhammad Ali intro, by the way. I shook up the world.
Correct, dude. Not many people recognize that bit. That's exactly what it is.
That's the iconic moment. Beat Sonny Liston in 1964, Miami Beach. Love it. Love it.
Yeah, because it's I think it might be Howard Cosell that speaks to him. And it's
yes.
That moment. No one thought it was going to happen. And he shook up the world.
Literally talk about one of the biggest upsets in boxing history. I mean, sorry, I hope you'll indulge me. I'm a big I'm a big fight fan like you, and really into the history as well of the sport. And I think that's what really kind of started off my journey with the combat sports. I mean, I remember going back to the first black heavyweight champion in the world, for example, Jack Johnson.
Right.
My dad was an ex-boxer. He was a very good amateur. And and when he was a boxer, he used to study the reels, the old reels.
Absolutely.
So he kept them. And I used to obsess about them when I was a little boy. So Jack Johnson, Jack Dempsey, Rocky Marciano, Sugar Ray Robinson, Gene Tunney, Dick Tiger, all the old great ones, Kid Chocolate. I used to love watching the old great ones. To me, they were a bit like how kids today must see like the Avengers and the Justice League. To me, they were real life superheroes because all of them, not only were they experts in the ring, but they had larger than life personalities. And I used to read about them, watch them, and really just obsess about them, have them on my wall. And I think that kind of just shows the power of getting what you focus on and visualization, because it was just a dream one day that maybe I could be, a version of those type of men where I could be recognized for my fighting and kind of live that lifestyle. So, you'll excuse me for showing my geekiness, though, but it really is, every time I hear, that I shook up the world or any of these classic throwbacks, it just reminds me of my childhood so much. Hours and hours of watching of fights. It was my biggest passion and still is today, to be honest, Radzi.
So there was a story, I think, from Cristiano Ronaldo where basically one of the players at United, he'd said something like, they were referencing an old United player, and one of the players said, "Who's that?" And Ronaldo said, "What do you mean, who's that?" This, by the way, is when he was at Real Madrid. He said, "What do you mean, who's that?" He said, "He used to play for your team. You've got to know your history." And I think of Mike Tyson, because of Customato, he had a library that he used to access. And he once said, "I used to know what they were going to throw before they were going to throw it themselves. I'd seen stuff that many times." And then I'm not even going to say which fighter it was. I was working at a boxing event, and I said to this guy, "You've got a physique like Jeff Lacey." He turned to me and said, "Who is Jeff Lacey?"
Oh, come on. That's not even that long ago.
And he's a professional. This guy's a professional boxer. I do not understand how you can't. I'm all about this thing behind me, pursuit of excellence. And what you're talking about is understanding the history, because you can learn so much from that to kind of move forward.
You're absolutely spot on. And my dad who was my instructor, by the way, for people who don't know. He's the one that got me into the martial arts and taught me everything I know from when I was about 3 years old. And he was a student of combat sports. And I believe he was greatly motivated when he saw what Customato did with Mike Tyson. And he wanted to ensure, but because I had the goal and the vision of being a fighter, that he'd accommodated me in a similar way. So being a student of whatever field you're in is the first step toward excellence. And I love how your podcast is called The Pursuit of Excellence, because I believe that excellence it's weird. I believe you can achieve it, but I believe the moment you think you have achieved it is the moment you stop being excellent. I think when you look at the great ones, whether in any field, we'll focus on sports for now, like say a Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan, for example, they're always thinking about what's next. What's next? How can I improve my game? And they never, ever shied away from the foundations. They always shot the basic shots that a lot of high schoolers may stop doing when they get into college. They always took it right back to the roots. They were all students of the game because of their star power and celebrity. Talking about Kobe and Michael specifically, they were actually able to have access to those great champions before them. So Kobe will always reference like a Jerry West, who was a great Laker before him, a Magic Johnson, a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So and Michael, the same. He always used to reference, say, a Jerry West, a Wilt Chamberlain. I know he was very good friends with Bill Russell. So these are NBA players. And I think it's a constant theme. Anybody who really achieves the pinnacle at their sport, they're always students of their particular field. And I just feel very blessed that my dad was smart enough to notice that. And fortunately for me, I feel I just fell in love with fighting at such a young age, and it doesn't feel like a chore for me to study the great champions, whether it's in Taekwondo, whether it's in karate, whether it's in boxing, because as a combat sports athlete, I believe I can learn something from every type of champion, and I really have.
It's and to your point, you think of someone like George Foreman. George Foreman sparred with Sonny Liston. And that was because Dick Sadler, George Foreman's coach, basically said the guys are intimidated of you before they actually get in the rings. They're not sparring with you. The only guy I'll be able to find who will not be afraid of you is Sonny Liston. And George, in his autobiography, basically tells a story about the fact that he said, I see this guy, Sonny Liston, arrive in the gym. He laces up his gloves and he looked tiny because he was a relatively old man. I think he used to lie about his age at the best of times. So he said, I thought, I'm just going to destroy this guy. So we went to touch gloves and he looked straight at me. He said, and I knew this guy was not afraid of me in the slightest. He said, so we sparred and it was fine. He said, but at the end, he's walked straight up to me and says, you're a big man, but you think you're a bad man. I'm the real bad man, but I can teach you how to be as well. And he said, wow. I would like to learn. And so Sonny then basically teaches him. And that's why George Foreman then became the original baddest man on the planet. Because after Sonny Liston and before Mike Tyson. Right. And so I tell you what's a shame in karate. So before we even get onto yourself, is karate at the Olympics. I thought I'm so interested to see the GB setup join in Manchester because there are so many things that they can learn specifically from Taekwondo. And I thought, and Jordan just fell short of qualifying. And I think had he made it, if any of the guys had made it, they could have been dangerous. But I think specifically because they could have learned from you guys.
Absolutely. Well, we'll talk about karate first. Yeah, like you, I was gutted when Jordan, or JT as I call him, didn't make it. You know what? He was unfortunate with some injuries in the build up to the qualification and a few things, in karate, a little bit political. What you just mentioned there, coming in and learning from GB Taekwondo, unfortunately, that didn't really go down so well with some of the higher ups in karate. I'm not a karate athlete, so I'm not afraid to say it, but I know that was difficult for Jordan as well, but he's a champion. And, I had a really good chat with him the other day, and I think he's going to have some very exciting announcements in the next year when it comes to his career. And I won't spoil it, but he's let's just say he's doing some different training currently, and I think you're going to see some really cool things in the next year. So, but he's still involved in karate as well. I know he's going for another world championship in karate as well. So, unlucky to him. One of the things about karate, if I may say so, and I don't know what your opinion was about the Olympics, was I think they're extremely explosive. I love how they're kind of it's like first off the mark, like sprinters. But for me, did you see the knockouts in the Olympic final where I believe Saudi Arabia knocked out the Iranian with a crisp front leg roundhouse kick, and it just caught him perfectly, and he was out. And unfortunately, due to the semi-contact rules in karate, which is very subjective, it's purely based on the judge's discretion, it was ruled that he used too much aggression or too much power, and the guy that was knocked out, being taken away on a stretcher, won the gold medal, and the other guy was disqualified, meaning he got a silver. For me, when this is the only time karate is scheduled to be in the Olympics, it's not going to be in Paris. That's what we know so far. I just felt like when the whole world is watching this new exciting Olympic martial art, I just felt like it was such a shame that those judges ruled that, because for me, that's what, I mean, with most respect to the Iranian, yes, getting knocked out isn't fun. However, this is combat, and let's face it, that's what people want to see. So I really felt like that was a mistake on the judges' side. Did you see that fight, and what was your thoughts on it, if you did?
So my thoughts on it would be, twofold. One, when you have rules, those are the rules that are in front of you. And so let's just say in long jump, if you happen to jump 1 meter and I have a no jump, i.e. my foot is on the board, and I happen to clear 8 meters, you still win, regardless of the fact that I've jumped 7 meters more than you, because the rules dictate that your foot cannot cross the line. And no matter if somebody said, right, let's penalize Radzi 2 meters because he's still beating Lutalo by 4 meters, those are the rules. The same with false starting. Now we only have a 1 false start rule in athletics. So for me, the issue would be there will obviously be no opportunity to change the rules because it's not at the next Olympics, but it would be not so much about condemning the scenario, but I would condemn the rules with a look to change the rules. That's what I would say. I would also just add that, so where it's tricky is if you throw a front kick with the most perfect precision and I decide I'm going to headbutt your kick, that's probably going to knock me out. And so, and therein lies the dilemma. Where does control but recklessness on my part kind of begin and end? But the thing that hurt me about it is that I love karate. I've grown up with it. I could list you karate world champions. You mentioned Jordan. His dad was a world champion. There's a guy called Wayne Otto, arguably.
Yes, Wayne Otto was the real deal. Jeff Thompson, Tyrone
Charles.
White, Tiki Donovan.
Exactly.
Vic Child.
Yeah.
Bad men in the 1980s. Bad.
And even, in France, there's a guy called Alexander Biamonti, for example. Actually,
not familiar with him.
As a guy who loves Taekwondo, as you do, this guy, I'm going to send you after this. I'll genuinely send you some stuff on Instagram, and I think you'll love it. It's beautiful. Please. But that's what I'd have loved to have seen. I wanted to just see wow moments that really put a showcase on for karate, and I felt as though what the biggest issue with karate, with Taekwondo. In fact, let's go back to 2012. Now you are in. This is your bronze medal match, which you win.
Yes.
It might even be in the first round, so the first 2 minutes. I do not know the move, but basically you do a jumping spinning kick, miss, and then hit him on the way down almost. I don't really know how to describe it. It was like it was a proper Tekken move. And I thought, how is this guy doing it at the Olympics? And that's what I wanted for the Olympics, which wasn't to be, but in Taekwondo, you do see it, which is the big problem that karate faced.
Yes, I think that's a fair point when it comes to karate. I don't know. I think I will go back to the rules. I think the rules probably do need to maybe change a bit. I'm not a karate expert, although I'm a big fan. So I can't say exactly what it is, but I know that's one thing that we have. Well, one thing Taekwondo has tried to do is try to make it more appealing so it can be a TV-ready Olympic sport. And I think we all saw, certainly in a couple months ago, in my opinion, it's the best Taekwondo has ever looked. as a sport. In my opinion, I think the high scoring matches, particularly with the British athletes, we saw high drama, last second drama. It wasn't just me, guys. So we saw that with Lauren, we saw that with Bianca, we saw that with Bradley and many others from other nations. I feel like the rules are just at a nice point now where they're easy enough to understand to an extent. And I think because of the amount of points that get on the board, because they have awarded more points for more complicated kicks, so you can I say easily for a professional, it's not uncommon to be, 5, 7, 10 points ahead and back to change literally in one exchange. And I think that does make it quite exciting because it's always quite gripping. So I do think the rules are a happy medium right now. Whereas karate, I think the major advantage Taekwondo's got over karate is that the judges have less involvement. The electronic body protection takes care of the vast majority of the scoring. In karate, we see, and I go back to that knockout in the Olympic final, we've both seen knockouts which have been fine. So how do you balance that? Like if that was a controlled knockout. It's like, for me, that's very, very subjective. And but I think that's the issue. And look, it's not just karate. There were some dodgy boxing decisions, and there always has been at the Olympics because let's face it. And I'll be brutally honest. Sometimes the British have been on the good end of it. Sometimes they've been on the worse end. Obviously, had a vested interest in Team GB when I'm watching the last couple of Olympics, but. I think that boxing in the amateurs and in the pros, the MMA, and what's the common link between all these sports as well as karate is that you have subjective judging, because it's based on if me and you can both be watching the same fight, you might be admiring the harder, more denser shots that have landed. Whereas I might think, okay, he controlled the ring more of his ring craft, of his footwork, of his movement, and his shots maybe weren't as hard, but I felt like he was technically better. So we could be watching the same fight and have two completely different conclusions. Whereas with Taekwondo, because of the electronic system, whether you love it or whether you hate it, it takes that out of it. And I think that is a positive, and it'd be very interesting to see how combat sports evolve. Whether we do see changing in the scoring, because I know obviously famous commentator Joe Rogan is a massive proponent of some sort of scoring change in MMA and in boxing, as well as many others. So I do think that's one of the reasons why Taekwondo has done well. I know we were one of the most viewed, well, I'll be honest, last time I checked, it was the most viewed sport. I think it helped that we were at Yes. So this was about maybe 10 days in. We still had the record for the most viewed sport. I think it was helped by it being early, there being high drama moments, and myself and some of the other analysts were going viral, so that helps it a lot as well. So really interesting. I think it's the best Olympics. Best Taekwondo's ever looked at the Olympics, and I think those are some of the reasons why.
I think also, to your point, one of the big issues I've always had with karate is you're seeing guys, so we call it a gakuzuki, which is a reverse punch. If me and you both throw a reverse punch, what's going to happen is we're not really going to touch, we're not going to sink it in, and we're then going to both run away screaming, yeah!
Yes.
And that's when it's, guys, come on now. Let's actually, this is either a combat or it's a dance or it's TIG. And that's the problem, is they spend half the time shouting about how much they sunk it in, and even other big things that have been taken away. One thing that would give them a USP over Taekwondo are the amount of sweeps that you would get in a normal competition, but not in the Olympics. They've reduced the amount of throws because of the grabbing. There's a guy called, I think it's not Agayev. Anyway, he's from Iran. No, he's not from Iran.
Okay.
Where's he from? He's from
Azerbaijan?
Yes, he is from Azerbaijan. Thank you. And he's regarded basically as the Maradona of karate. And he's won multiple world titles, but his big thing is throws. Well, they've taken away this element of throwing because it has to be so clean that it's almost impossible to actually do, which means that while he would now be trying to get this perfect sweep, somebody's just going to reverse punch. And even though in reality, it's not really going to do any damage, in competition, it is. And so that for me is another thing. Why don't we favor big scores for big high risk things? Because otherwise guys are going to stay safe all the time. And that's why I suppose in your situation 2016 it kind of went against you personally, but it's drama all the way through. In fact, should we talk about 2016? Because
Sure.
the thing that hurt me most about seeing the outcome for yourself, first of all, Olympic silver medalist, flipping wow, but it was your dad and you writing on a poster in 2000 that you were set to become, the dream was Olympic champion in 2016. Like, did you think about that going into Rio?
You know, I can't actually say I was totally aware. It crossed my mind. I think probably a little bit after I qualified. But oh wow, you know, that's kind of surreal. This is the year where I planned to win, so I was aware of it. But you know, going into that final, I was just thinking more about just following my game plan as perfectly as possible, and just being as clinical as I could. And you know, obviously it was going well, and I remember getting to the last bit of the fight, and I remember the crowd counting down from 10 with me. There was a few like kind of referee pauses, but I remember it vividly, getting down to 1, and I heard the crowd cheering as if I'd won. However, the match was still going. And I thought, oh, this is weird. So I was still in the moment. I was still fighting, but I was aware. It just felt like it was cheering, and it just felt like 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. I thought, okay, well, the fight's still going on. Then he threw a terrific technical kick, a spinning kick, which gives you the highest amount of points, which is what he needed to land if he was going to win. And obviously, I tried to block it. I think it just got me, and boom, then the match was over. Then I heard the artificial bell go, and it was just like, and you know, it was years ago, and obviously I'm over it. But at that time, it was just so devastating, Radzi, to, like you said, when you've been building towards something your whole life, and no one goes into an Olympic final thinking about silver. When you fight your way into an Olympic final, gold is the only thing on your mind. And that's my mindset anyway, but it was heightened because it's the Olympic final. This is what was ready to be the crowning moment of my career and my life, really. Because like I mentioned, when you've been admiring and obsessed with fighting since a little boy, and you know, having my dad training me since I was a little boy, my entire family supporting me, focused, everything, you know, nutrition, traveling around the world, everything was geared towards that moment. And for it to, I don't want to say it was snatched away, but for it to feel like it was snatched away, and to see Cisse, who was my opponent from the Ivory Coast, who won gold, kind of celebrating wildly and overwhelmed with emotions and running into the crowd, you kind of visualize that's what you'll be doing. But when you see your opponent doing it, and just the steady realization that not only have you lost the Olympic final, you've have to wait, you know, a bare minimum of 4 years to even get another opportunity to fight to get into an Olympic final. It was devastating. It was heartbreaking. It was all those things, and you just feel like everything's just caved in, and you just feel like you're gonna sink into that ring. And although you're in a packed arena, 10,000 sold out, you feel like you're completely alone in there. And, you know, it was sad at the time. Obviously, I had this subsequent interview, which went viral, and it was very emotional. It was very raw. It was very honest, because it was like 30 seconds after the fact. Didn't really have time to compose myself or think about any media training or anything like that. It was one of those really, really tough moments, but it's those moments that make you, that make you. They make you or break you. And Boza, you know, I'm grateful for the way it's toughened me up as a person, as a fighter, and kind of as a man. It's, you know, those kind of moments teach you a lot about life. That, hey, just because you work for something, just because you seemingly deserve something, doesn't mean you're always going to get it. And that's okay. In a way, I mean, obviously, you have a right to be disappointed. You have a right to be upset or angry for a period. But I only say that's okay because life goes on and you have to move on. You have to keep looking forward. And ultimately, when something's in your past now, it's outside of your control. And you may as well lean into it. And by lean into it, I mean, you may as well learn from it. You may as well study, you know, the build up, not just the fights itself, but the build up to the Olympics. What could I have done better? How could my preparation have been even more professional? Could I have seen that coming? Could I have prevented it? Maybe if I had done this certain sparring situation a little bit more mentally, perhaps I should mentally have rehearsed that situation a bit more. So for me, the process of coming out of that slump was taking accountability, taking full responsibility. And yeah, okay, like you mentioned at the beginning, don't get me wrong, I'm very proud to be an Olympic silver medalist. It's a wonderful achievement. But instead of moping around and being depressed, taking control of the situation. Like, how can I take action here? And how can I, and if this is painful like it was to me, what can I do to ensure that this never happens again? And I'm not saying I'm never going to lose again. However, how can I ensure that that particular way of losing doesn't happen again? And I feel like that's what losses are for. They're almost necessary on the journey in a way, because those losses, you can use that to keep correcting yourself, because I'm not a believer that, you know, you have to lose lots of times, and you know, it builds character. Winning builds character too. So why not win? And for me, a loss only stays a loss. It only stays if you don't learn from it. So if I can learn, if I can improve, and that kind of mindset only comes when you take full accountability for what happened. So I feel like I'm a better version of myself mentally and physically than I was in 2016, because I learned and studied lessons from not just the Olympic day itself, but the whole build up to the Olympics. And I'm applying them now. And that's why I believe that 2024 Paris will be very successful for me. So in a way, it was unfortunate that it happened at the time, but the lessons I've learned from it have certainly made me a better and stronger athlete. So yeah, I lean into what I can control, which is my daily commitment and my daily study to be a better Taekwondo athlete.
Make it real at the University of Derby.
So I was trying to do skeleton bobsleigh at one stage. I was
Okay.
at the Winter Olympics in 2014. Now,
Wow.
it didn't happen for me, obviously. It didn't happen. I went to the British trials, and long story short, we were told the rules stated if you came top 10 in GB, you'd be going in the British champs. Me and my mate Leon came 9th and 8th. And then basically,
Wow.
they moved the goalposts because we came from outside the system, was what happened. Now, when I look back at that, roll on, so that was 2010 November, roll on 3 years, I get a show called Wild on CBBC. That's because they wanted somebody with an extreme sports background. I'm fast forwarding through 3 years very quickly here. Did that for 10 weeks. And off the back of that, got Blue Peter. Now, I love what I do for a living. I'm so grateful. I'm blessed. I feel a sense of gratitude most days. But so I could look at it and rationalize it and say, do you know what? Quote unquote, everything happens for a reason. I could chuck all sorts of cliches out there to justify why I prefer what I'm doing now to what I would have had then. But if the truth be told, I think about that quite a lot. I think about how different my life would have been. And so I don't know if I'll ever be 100% over it, if that makes sense. And that wasn't me at an Olympics. That was just the opportunity to compete for Great Britain in the hope that I would have gone to 2014, what would have been Sochi. So
yes,
people might say, oh, Taylor, it must have taken a while to get over it. But you're the person who's living that every day. You're almost living the consequence of that. So how often, if ever at all, do you even think about that moment? Because it was so binary. It was 1 second.
Of course, I think about it. I think realistically, I think about it when, like, for example, I got injured before the 2020 games. It was just a very unfortunate run for me. I had a couple of injuries that just prevented me from qualifying. That's life. It is what it is. We talk about disappointments. It is what it is. However, it's moments like that, maybe when you start to get some injuries and you don't qualify. My mind will go back to it and think, oh man, if only I had won that gold medal, then even if I'm in a situation I'm in now, at least I would have been Olympic champion. Because now it's like I may never become Olympic champion. I missed my chance. I missed my opportunity. Most Olympians, I don't know if you know, Radzi, it's actually quite rare for people to go to more than one Olympics. The majority, I saw a statistic, I think it was about 70% or maybe over, only ever go to one Olympics. So the fact that I'd already been to 2 and now I hadn't qualified at my 3rd attempt, it was like, is this ever going to happen? And that's when it kind of goes back to, oh man, if only I'd won in 2016. But I think what you have to do when you have those situations is accept the reality of it. I think you said it really well there, because it was so binary, because it was like literally so close. It's always going to be with me. It's always going to be something that occasionally I think about, no matter how great my life is. Radzi, if I go on to win 3 gold medals in a row from now, I'm always going to think about, missed that one in 2016. That's life. And I think progress happens when you recognize it's completely normal. It's human nature. You're always going to think about what you didn't get, or, what you didn't have. Or, I can still remember some of the toys that my mum refused to buy me. It's like, so, you're always going to have those little things in life. And like I said, if you dwell on that too long, that's when I think it's unhealthy. But I think it's perfectly normal that it's going to cross your mind, because we're not robots. We're human beings. Yeah. We're emotional, and you're going to remember the moments that gave you pain, especially when you feel like you're hard done by. One of the things that really kind of hurt me a bit at the time is that countdown that I described, where it felt like it was long. Actually, wasn't just a weird feeling. It was actually facts. The clock was slow. So the fight should have been over.
No way.
The clock was a few seconds slow, which is why it was like almost that weird limbo. Where it's like, so exactly. However, once the result is done, you can't appeal it. But GB Taekwondo did an investigation and forced an investigation. So technically, I should be the Olympic champion right now. However, like you just mentioned in your situation, it's hard luck. That's life. We see it all the time in sports where, a decision maybe, and I'm not taking anything away from Cisse. He threw a terrific kick like I said, I take full accountability. Sometimes the clock is going to be slow. Sometimes you are going to get judges that score something differently. That's life. You know, what I could have controlled better was my perhaps my defense. You know, my arm was here. Maybe it should have been here. It is what it is. I just focus on what I could have done better. And for me, that's what keeps me, how I can look back at it as a healthy minded individual, is that when I look back and I think of it, I mean, what I've just mentioned there, I rarely ever mention, because I kind of feel like it's shifting the blame. It is what it is. I mean,
you didn't in facts, though. It's a fact. If that's the case, then that's a fact. That's not an opinion. That's not you saying, woe is me.
Yeah. It is a fact, yeah.
So let's take Bianca. She was injured in Tokyo, and she didn't mention it until afterwards, and she happened to say it on camera when I was working for Eurosport, but she said it so flippantly. She just said, I basically now need to go and get my ankle fixed. And I said, well, how do you mean fixed? She said, I ruptured a tendon. And I said, rupture or tear? She went, rupture. I said, when did you do it? She went, 6 weeks ago. And I just thought, wow. Now, again, that wasn't her saying the reason I lost was because of this. That's a fact. A fact is she was injured going into it. And so, mate, how do you deal with what happened in 2012? Because for most people, you mentioned not many people get to go to a second Olympics. I don't know what the stats would be, but how many get to compete in a home Olympics?
Wow.
And there you were,
barely,
right, 20 years old, and then you have to overcome the controversy, which gets spoken out on the news by journalists, not experts. And now I'm not sat here saying, so the scenario was Aaron Cook, at the time representing GB, #1 in the world. We've got yourself, European champion. Who do they choose? They decide to choose you. Without getting into the kind of intricacies, the result was your family basically get death threats off the back of this. And you're 20, you're green as grass. I mean, I'm thinking about myself at university. I wouldn't be equipped to deal with that. Journalists asking, how do I feel? And all I'm meant to be thinking about is the Olympic Games. Like, how the hell did you cope with that time?
I think it was very tough. The pressure was tremendous. And I always say there's positive pressure and there's negative pressure. I was very unfortunate at the time to receive negative pressure, where it felt like no one wanted me to go, and that if I didn't win, if anything less than gold, it would have been a total failure. Even if I had won the gold, it should have been somebody else. So it was a horrible atmosphere going in. I'm not going to lie to you. It wasn't very pleasant. And I feel like people like Jessica Ennis and Mo Farah would have had tremendous pressure too. However, that pressure was positive, where it was like people willing them to win.
Right.
Unfortunately, I felt like from the media kind of stuff that was coming out, it was painted as, I was painted a bit like the villain. And unfortunately, if you go to the comments, there was people kind of willing me to lose. And you mentioned some of the really nasty letters that my family would get through their letterbox, my dad's place of business, media following my dad to his place of business, following my mum when she was out shopping. So knowing that it's affecting your family was the most difficult thing. And that was the hardest part, really. I was less concerned about me. I hated to see my mum and dad so stressed. And unfortunately, as a result, that stressed me out. Although GB Taekwondo did a very good job of kind of keeping me in a protected bubble. And interestingly, I don't know if you know this, Radzi, but we actually practiced sparring situations like Olympic test days with speakers turned up with booze and heckling, so I could get accustomed to it if the stadium was receiving me negatively. I think it just kind of shows how powerful the media can be. The situation at the time was Cook had a very powerful and influential agent, very good links with the media, and one thing led to another, and they had the media support. So I think it really shows how the media can paint a certain picture, because I'm very happy to say, Radzi, when I went out to the first time into the Olympic Stadium, the crowd was overwhelmingly positive, and it really gave me a lift and a boost. But unfortunately, all the way up until that moment, I was expecting the very worst. And as you alluded to, with everything that was going on, you couldn't really do anything but that. And like I said, we even practiced fighting with heckles and boos. So that's what it felt like going into 2012. But similar to the situation in Rio, what a way to pop your Olympic cherry. I felt like the pressure I was under was like a baptism of fire. I really, really made it, that sequence of events made me mentally stronger than perhaps anything
Can I jump
in my
because
life.
the other dynamic was that you had, so Bianca walked in, spoken to her on Making Gains, actually. Wonderful.
Wow.
Love Bianca. Wicked girl.
Yeah, she's great. She's great.
The fact that she was part of GB at that point as well, kind of,
yes,
that makes it further complicated for yourself, where I suppose all you really want to do, it's like being, let's say, in a workplace where you ultimately need to cathartically vent. You need to have that sense of trust. And how can you have that when the woman who loves and is in love with ultimately the guy who you are coming up against it's like a strange love triangle? And then at the heart of this love triangle isn't lust, it isn't sex, it's the Olympic Games that you're also in love with. Like, that is at such a young age. And you mentioned kind of practicing the booze. Emotionally, that must have been so draining to walk out there. It's one thing, like that expectation of deliver adrenaline, but when there's emotion attached to it, that must have just been exhausting, mate.
Absolutely. I mean, I've always had a great relationship with Bianca. Obviously, she's now engaged to be married.
Yeah, in the Colosseum they got engaged.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's a very cool proposal. My relationship with Aaron right now is great, so I'm very happy to say that kind of move forward from that time. But at the time, it was extremely awkward. It was extremely awkward because Bianca was the reserve to Sarah Stevenson. So we were in all the same sessions. We were the Olympic group. So it was extremely, I guess it must have been difficult for her. However, again, I felt like the mental leveling up actually started to happen from there, because it was like when you're forced in a situation, it's going to happen. I know I'm going to have to compete. So I have to prepare the best I can and be the best I can. And I did my best on that day. Bronze was what my best delivered. But I lean into the positive. It made me so mentally strong. And yes, like you mentioned, it was such a weird and tough situation. However, it made me a tougher person. So although I still wouldn't say I'd wish that on anybody, it did happen. So I just have to accept it, and I have to be pleased with the fact that it made me mentally stronger. Although I would be lying to you, Radzi, if I said if I could go back and change it, I wouldn't. I wouldn't wish that kind of build up. I wouldn't wish that kind of pressure on somebody's parents, on anybody. So it got nasty, it got out of hand, but it happened, and it's one of the things that made me the man I am today.
Do you know, one thing I was speaking to somebody about was, and I won't actually ask you about it, but I'll ask you another example. So CJ Ujah. So as I speak to you now, so it came out in the news, positive B sample. So presumably they're going to lose the medal. Now, move that issue to one side, because for me, it's more about the fact that the big problem is that sport and in life, what's going to now happen is they're probably going to go after him Whether that's right, whether that's wrong, discussion for another day. But if that guy were to mentally struggle and were to possibly do something that the unimaginable, it's only then that things will change. It's only then that if Dwayne Chambers had taken his own life, all of a sudden there would be a reflection of, maybe we shouldn't come after these people and their loved ones. Christina Horogu, back in, I think it was 2007, where they came after her and her family. And let's even say somebody is guilty. Does it make them an evil person? Does it make everyone around them have to have condemned? Because Christine told me about the fact they were following her sister to school. Her sister's friends and peers in school were making her life basically really bad. And you think, actually, that's the side you don't see. So I'll see a picture of Lutalo in the papers and go, bad man. But actually, there's a consequence which could result in something which would be unimaginable for all your loved ones. And that never gets really considered in my eyes.
I think that's a very, very good point. And sadly, we can get so caught up in painting someone as the villain, whether they deserve it or not. But we forget that that person is somebody's son, somebody's daughter. He has a mom, he has a dad, he has sisters, he has family, he has friends. And you know what? Even when this whole thing passes, or in Christine's case, they're always going to, unfortunately, have those detractors and people that will always kind of point the finger at them, even when they might not necessarily deserve it. You know, Christine's case was unfortunately pretty understandable. She, if I remember correctly, she missed, she never actually failed a test. She missed tests. And, you know, when you see situations like that, and I remember the atmosphere around her, I remember when she actually got the gold in 2008, there was still a bit of like, and I will say this, I don't feel like Christine Ohurugu's ever fully got the credit she deserved
100%.
For being Olympic champion,
100%.
for being world champion, for being Commonwealth champion, for being European champion. A feat that very few people have ever accomplished. I can only think of Greg Rutherford and Olympia Christie. They come to mind, Brits that have done that, won everything. And I felt like she was, I really felt for her that even though she had that incident, moved on from it in the best possible way, smashing it, winning the Olympics, I don't think she ever really fully got the credit she deserves. And I really appreciate that you mentioned that about her sister, because it just it brings to the forefront the effect these sensational kind of media stories can have on people. And like you said, I think I remember seeing it again with Justin Gatlin when he was really painted as the when he was the main rival of Usain Bolt. He was really like the old cowboy movies. You have the guy in the black hat who's evil, and you know the guy in the white hat. That's another conversation entirely. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but it is what it is. But I felt like Justin Gatlin was the guy in the black hat, and so much so when it came to London 2017, in the Olympic in the World Championship final, all 8 men on the field were getting massive cheers. Obviously, Usain Bolt the biggest cheer, but when it came to Justin Gatlin, huge boos, and this is throughout every single time he raced. He had big, massive boos. And personally, I just didn't like how it was like they were blaming Gatlin for the problems of the entire sport. There were other men in that lineup who had tested positive in the past, but Justin Gatlin was getting all the blame for a problem there. If we're just keeping it very real, Radzi has been in athletics for a long time. And unfortunately, he won't be the last person to fail a drugs test. And neither will CJ. So,
well, mate, let's add another thing to that equation. So in 2016, in Rio, in the pole vault final, the Brazilian was getting cheers and Renard Lavillenie was getting boos. And what happened in the commentary? They condemned it. They said, this is disgraceful. There should be complaints made. This should be banned. You shouldn't be allowed to put off your opponent. Well, roll on 365 days and there wasn't the same complaints made about Justin Gatlin. And if we go back to the very start of the conversation, when we spoke about the knockout rule in karate, I spoke about rules being rules. Listen, I'm game for rules. I'm game for a process. I'm game for a procedure, but be bloody consistent. Say,
Amen.
Boos, if they're bad for one guy, they're bad for everyone. Not because, like you say, this guy happens to have the black hat. And I'll say another thing. I was actually in the stadium when Gatlin got the boos. And I would encourage anyone to watch that footage back. Right. Now, watch Gatlin's face, because to me, I believe the boos made him win, because I believe the boos almost absolved him of actual tension. It started off and the boo, he was kind of semi-expecting it. And then it carried on just for a couple of extra seconds. And you almost saw him go, oh, forget it. Almost as though I don't care anymore. Whereas 2015, he was in the form of his life. He was faster than Usain Bolt all season. And in the last 5 meters, he tightened, which he's never done before in his entire life. So the difference maker this time, there was no tightening, because I don't care anymore. These guys are never going to forgive me. They're never going to forget. I'm always going to be the black hat guy. So I don't care. I'm just going to run free. Upshot, he's now the world champion, having been the world champion before, but he was the world champion in 2017. And I put it down to that crowd in the London Olympic Arena that day.
Man, you're spot on with that observation, Radzi. I too was in that crowd on that day, and I definitely wasn't booing. I hated it. However, I think it helped him. I think it helped him, like you. And again, I remember that race in 2015 where he should have won. He was in form. I think in the semi-finals he ran 9.83, which would have been enough to win. So he clearly was in the top form. But I think that tension, and Usain Bolt does what Usain Bolt always does. He finishes strong and he won that race. Whereas I had the exact same observation. And you know what, Radzi, especially as someone that's faced adversity going into a big event before, I was actually happy for him. And taking all, your politics or your views on people that have failed drug tests out of it, in that moment, I was really happy for him, because I didn't think that he deserved what the treatment that he got. I was actually a little bit disappointed as someone that represents Britain, that this is how we received someone that's come here to compete, who's trained hard, and for crying out loud is not the only person in that final lineup, never mind in the entire tournament, that had failed a drugs test. I just felt like we could have done better. And I was actually very disappointed in the crowd. However, I was happy for Gatlin on that day. So, maybe, I know you said it, everything happens for a reason, but I did feel like that was one of those moments. For me, it's the reason I was happy for him, because I was as well, was a case of let he without sin cast the first stone. Because, that crowd may not have failed a drugs test, but I would ask them, have they been faithful in every relationship? Have they ever cheated in an exam? Have they ever lied to somebody, got an ang? Listen, this is what I deal with that on a daily basis, sinning, ultimately. I'm so far from perfect. It's unbelievable. So this guy just happens to have reneged on one element of his life. Let's not pretend that he's any worse than me. He's certainly not any worse than me. He might be worse than other people, but he isn't worse than me. And so I think actually, when I remember actually 2017. So the 2017 USA trials. So he wins that. And the interviewer, a guy called John Lewis, says to him, Justin, it was looking pretty clear that you were going to win that. And he said, how are you feeling? He said, I'm really relieved. Really relieved. He said, are you? He said, yeah, because I've already bought my mum's and dad's plane ticket for London and booked their hotel. So, and that to me is that's because we forget that he is a son. And all I thought when those boos were happening is his parents are having to listen to that. And that's tough.
And to your point, when you said the fact that your parents got stressed out made me stressed out, when the journey of my world to presenting, people just see I hold a microphone and it was as easy as pie. They don't see the 3 years partly living in Manchester in Hatter's hostel with mice running through the kitchen that I couldn't even afford to live in the bleeding hostel. And part of the stress was my mum, knowing that my mum had all the faith in the world in me. And I wanted to put her faith in a place of validation. I wanted to do her proud. I know she's always going to be proud of me, but I wanted to do it justice. And so actually, I think we talk about Caroline Flack, be kind. Well, let's be kind across the bleeding board here. And that's, but I want to also talk to you about your broadcast career because, and I say career, what happened as a result of you not going to Tokyo was, mate, your punditry, the country loved it. How was that for you?
It was really, really nice for me. I mean, like I said, at Olympics, I'm always looking to be there, and there's disappointment with not qualifying. However, maybe it was a little bit easier than it could have been because it did kind of feel a little bit outside my control with the injury situation. Right. So, and there was enough time before it was announced where I knew what was going on. So, and I feel like the next best thing, if you can't be at an Olympics, is to be able to, or for me to talk about my friends and to do some punditry. So I still felt like I was really involved in it. So I was very, very happy when the BBC gave me that call. And I remember just wanting to do myself and do my sport justice. That's really, if I had any goals going in, that's all it was. And I started to feel the buzz after day one. You know, start to get a bunch of tweets, and you think, okay, let's go. That's very nice that a couple of people are tweeting me. And by day two, it was kind of viral, and it was it was a little bit weird because I found it very similar to the Olympics in a way. You'll know, obviously, from being in broadcasting that when you're in the green room and when you're in the studio, you kind of are in a bubble. And I saw it very similar to the Olympic Village, where you know, you're checking your phone a little bit, but you kind of close off to the outside world, and you're not really tuned into everything that's going on. It's only when you come out, finish your shift, you kind of fully realize that, oh wow, this is a bit bigger than I thought. So overall, Radzi, I'm just really, really grateful and flattered that people took so well to my my analyst work, and all I can put it down to is I'm extremely passionate about sport as a whole, not just combat sport, and I think that just shined through. I you know, obviously get emotional when seeing my friends compete, but you know, I'm just grateful that the public took so well to it, and I'm just relishing the opportunities that are coming as a result of it. So, you know, my overall feeling is just hugely flattered, hugely grateful, and just very happy that people took so well to my Olympic performance, which didn't involve me competing at the Olympics.
And just finally, so if we fast forward 3 years, so Paris happens, let's say the dream happens and you get gold, what would the next 4, 8, 10 years look like for you?
As an Olympic gold medalist in Paris 2024, I think I'll be looking and seriously considering if I want to do another cycle. I'll be 33 years old in Paris, and if I was to go on for LA, I'll be 37. Although I'm taking it one cycle at a time, I'm really hugely inspired by athletes who are still performing at optimum level, even though they're older. So I would consider, you know, Cristiano Ronaldo in that both at 36 years old is still looking amazing. Tom Brady is a massively obvious one, who's still competing, I believe 42 this year.
Right.
I want to say. So
Eliud
I'm really
Kipchoge even.
inspired. Exactly. Wow. Wow. I mean, exactly. So, you know, someone like him is still, you know, able to break world records at an age where most people wouldn't have thought it'd be possible. That really inspires me. So I think I'd seriously be considering going for another Olympic cycle. But beyond that, I definitely love doing the TV analyst work. I admire people like Michael Johnson, who made the transition very well. Jeanette Kwachi has made the transition extremely well. So impressed with her. She is just amazing. And others. And I think I'll just be looking to straddle that media as along with my Taekwondo. And I'm also really passionate about teaching, Radzi. I mean, my dad still has his Taekwondo school in Hackney,
What's it
North
called, by the way?
London. It's called the Taekwondo Academy, nice and simple, on Prince George Road, just off Stoke Newington Road. Been in Stokey for 24 years now. So it's a very long-standing business. You know, pretty much everyone in the community knows my dad, and it's that really makes me proud of him. And I definitely see myself getting involved more permanently with my family business. I love teaching. I love the martial arts and helping pass on that skill to another generation, to pass on the skills that have helped me, I believe, become a better man, a better martial artist. Has given me health. It's given me wellness. It's given me a career. It's given me a platform to which I've been able to explore other careers. I would love to pass on that blessing that my dad passed on to me, not just to my future children, but to other young people and people of all ages. I mean, I've been in a class, Radzi, where the youngest has been 7 and the oldest has been 70. So I'm not, that's what I know you as passionate about the martial arts as me. And it just, that's one of the things I love so much. You can, it really is, it's more than physical activity. It's more than self-defense. It's life skills. And I think they apply to people of all ages, genders, and everything else. It just applies to everybody. And I would, well, I will love and enjoy doing some teaching. So I think that's what's going to keep me most occupied after my career is certainly getting more involved in the family business and ideally doing some more analyst work. I need to get involved with the boxing, man. That's the dream. That's the dream. I'd love to be doing some work on the boxing. I'm actually going to be doing some work on the MMA soon, which I'm super excited about.
Nice.
Bellator. I'll be doing some stuff with the BBC. Going to see MVP Michael Venom Page, who I know you're a big fan of. I think I'm going to chat with him next week. We'll be doing some stuff around the build-up and some stuff on the day of the fight. He's fighting on October 1st in London, Wembley Arena. Big fight against Douglas Lima coming up. So do TV work and just media work with the combat sports especially, and teaching. I think those two things will keep me very busy and very happy when I decide to hang up my my Taekwondo socks.
Mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for squeezing me in. And also the bit that people won't necessarily know is you've currently got food in the oven that you've switched off. So I feel very blessed that you found time, mate. It's always an absolute privilege. So thank you, sir.
No, well, the pleasure's all mine, Radzi. I really enjoyed the interview. It's always great to be have a conversation with someone as knowledgeable as yourself, and I hope it's not the last time. I hope you have me back. I've had a great time today, so thank you for having me.
Definitely have you back, my friend, and all the very best of luck for the next competition and training cycle.
Yes, same to you. Good luck with your pursuit of excellence. Take care.
Thank you, dude.
Naked bacon. One day, all bacon will be made this way.